Welcome everyone to tonight's Career Speaker Series event featuring David Bonnette from the class of 1993. We're glad that you're with us. Hope this finds you well and safe. As we've been doing the last few weeks, if you would, use the Q&A box. When you come into the room, let us know where you're logging in from, your class year and your major. We'd love to know who's with us tonight. Thank you for that. We'll get started the program at about 6:05. We'll give people time to get into the room. Welcome back, Louise. Great to have you with us again. Again, welcome as you come into the room. We're glad to have you with us. Hi, Chitra, welcome. Great to see you again. Hope this finds you all well. We'll get started about 6:05. Hey, Jace, great to see you again. Thanks for being with us. And thanks for contributing to next week's event. That's going to be a lot of fun, so thank you. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get started tonight. Again, welcome to tonight's Career Speaker Series event. When you come into the room, if you would, let us know where you're logging in from and your class year and major, and that'll help us frame the conversation a bit. We hope this finds you and your family well and safe. And that the final push toward the end of the semester is going well for you. Hey, Nick, welcome. Senior living in Keene. Hey, Peg, thanks for joining us. So David and Daniel, we got some staff colleagues on, several students. Hey, Tatiana, thanks for joining us again. Tatiana has participated in every Career Speaker Series event this semester, both in person and virtual.
Great.
Thank you, Tatiana. It's been great to follow your live tweeting and see what you're gleaning from each week's session. We look forward to having you on the panel next week. I'll talk about that in just a few minutes when we get started. We'll start again, repeat, we'll start at about 6:05. Let us know when you come into the room. We'd love to know where you're logging in from and your class year and your major. And I'm super excited about tonight because the person who got this series started in 2014 is able to be with us tonight. Can't wait to introduce him to all of you, or reintroduce you, I'm sure, in many cases. All right, we'll get started in a couple more minutes. If you haven't already, if you're in the room and don't mind sharing, we would love to know where you're logging in from tonight and your class year and your major. That'll help us think through parts of the presentation and questions. Once we get going, you'll use that same question and answer box to put in any questions that you have for David, our featured speaker tonight. And my friend and colleague Mark will monitor those and get those off to David on your behalf. We'll give it just another minute. Again, if you don't mind sharing when you come into the room, we'd love to know where you're logging in from, your class year, and your major. All right. Why don't we get started? And I will let you know that the close that out. This event and all of the virtual events since we started the week after spring break went immediately virtual, as did classes, and they have all been recorded. So you can look for any of the previous ones, and then in a couple of days, you can find this one at the Academic and Career Advising YouTube channel, which is Keene State College ACA. So look for it there. To get started, just a couple of announcements. I am delighted to share with students that we have added one more panel. Tonight's was planned to be the final event of the spring semester. But in the middle of last week, it occurred to me that we've had several students, one of whom who is on tonight, who I mentioned earlier, has been on every single one of the Career Speaker Series events all semester. And a couple of her classmates in biology have been on all but one or two. And I thought it'd be really valuable to have them tell their peers on a panel what they found to be most valuable, the key takeaways from them from any one of the events, or if they're like me, they've probably seen some themes run through each of the events. So there'll be an opportunity for students to talk with fellow students and share what they gleaned from the various events throughout the semester. So we thank them very much for being willing to do that, and I look forward to hosting that conversation. To students, I just wanted to remind you to please be checking your Keene State College email on a regular basis. There's a lot of important stuff coming your way. I hope you know that if you deserve a refund, you should have gotten it late last week. So there would be an email announcement about that. And also a reminder that we have a section on our Keene State website, keene.edu, focused all on COVID-19 with a very robust frequently asked questions section. And there are things actually last week on this event, a student asked in the Q&A when I mentioned about student loan forgiveness, federal student loan forgiveness, someone asked about that, and I was able to work with marketing communications and get all of that information up the next day, the next morning. So a lot of very valuable information for you, and including some resources that are valuable to tap into at this time for you, both financially and health-wise and otherwise. So with that, I am very delighted. We have a special guest on with us tonight. In 2014, Daniel Henderson created, shortly after coming to Keene State College, after a very successful career in the for-profit business world, created the Career Speaker Series, and it's run nearly every Tuesday night since 2014 with incredibly valuable information and panelists and connections and networking happening each and every Tuesday night. It's been a pleasure and an honor to fill in for Daniel this semester while he's out. But Daniel and David have a history together, and I invited Daniel to come on and do the introduction of our guest tonight, our featured speaker, David Bonnette. Daniel, over to you.
Thanks for being a lot. Yeah, thanks, Steve. I just want to say hi to, I can't see anyone who's participating this evening, but I know a number of you, and it's great to be here virtually. I've known David since, I guess it's been probably 4 or 5 years ago when the first person edition of the Keene State Alumni magazine came out, and had a profile on David, and when I read it, I thought, wow, this is a great story. So I called him up, and he took the call, and we had a great conversation. And he's really interested in Keene State and in the students that are there now. And I thought he had such a good experience, and spoke about that experience so well. I invited him to come be on do the Career Speaker Series. I guess about 4 years ago. He did a great job, and he's also been come into classrooms and talk to students there. And I know that's something he's anxious to do when the virus situation clears up. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about introducing David, other than to say he has he's really figured out how to be successful. He's going to share how he has gone about doing that with you, and he is he's doing some really interesting things in the world of private equity, which he will tell you more about. But he got his start at Oracle in software in sales. I think he'll tell you more about this, but he didn't know anything about computers. He had to learn it on the fly, but he worked really hard. I suspect there are probably some things he wished he'd done before he graduated and took advantage of that he didn't do, but he'll share more of that with you himself. The whole point of the Career Speaker Series is to provide an opportunity for you to hear from people who are in the professional community, talk about their experience. No one ever comes at this in a straight line, or rarely, and it's very valuable to hear their stories, and it also gives you a chance to make some connections that can be valuable to you if you are ambitious and well prepared. So I think that's enough of me talking. So let's turn it over to David. And David, thanks so much for doing this evening.
Well, you're welcome, Daniel. It's great to see you. And for the folks that don't know Daniel, he's been an inspiration to me since the day I met him, in at least two really fundamental ways. One is in courage, and at the time it was his courage to leave for-profit work and go take on what I found to be, and I'm still admiring, as a pretty tall order to drive some transformation into public colleges and institutions. And there are a lot of headwinds in that endeavor. And the second way, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about this tonight, is in this category of what I'm talking to my CEOs about, is described as servant leadership. And it's a lot of empathy and compassion and humility, accessibility. And in this environment right now, that is a critical factor for success for all of our leaders. So Daniel, thanks for staying close to me, man. I know I'm a little busy, and it's great to see you, though. And as this current chapter continues to unfold for you, we all admire your courage and your ongoing leadership. So thanks a lot for that.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Yeah. And Steve and Daniel all, thanks for allowing me to be part of the conversation. So it's always great to be back with anything related to Keene State. And then third, before we get started, just to everybody on the call, I guess kind of two parts. One, I wish I'd done this when I was in your shoes. So I'm glad that you guys are doing this and trying to take advantage of it. Hopefully I'll make this a good use of your time. And then second, everybody, I certainly hope that you and your families and your extended circles of friends are healthy and doing as well as can be expected right now in this situation. So we can talk a little bit about that as well. We've got our hands on a lot of science and research in our kind of field of work. So I'm happy to share with you whatever I know that could be useful. So a little bit of background on me. I thought I'd just talk about a few things. One is what I would describe as my journey, and Keene State has a lot to do with it even still today. I'll give you a little bit of background on me, my journey, and then where I am today, but I think more interestingly, just the world of software. I just happen to be operating in it through a financial vector. But the world of software is something that I wish I'd known more about long ago. So my quick story, I presently live in Dallas, Texas, but to rewind the tape, I grew up in New York in a small town outside of Manhattan. I obviously went to Keene. I met a girl, so I moved out to San Francisco right out of college, and then I stumbled into software, and I'll more on that in a moment. I've got 3 kids. They're all home, so if you hear some weird stuff in the background, it's probably one of those 3. They're 16, 13, and 10. And I am a huge live music fan, and everybody's got their, wow, COVID's changed my life. Well, this was my season to hit Jazz Fest, Coachella, Dead & Company, the Lumineers. Like this is like my summer tour that gets going here. So that remains a void for me, but I figured out through distance music, learning and all that sort of stuff, and good live shows that are streaming. I like to cook a lot, which means I like to eat a lot, and try to stay in shape. And then I'm a big lover of contemporary art. So you might see this thing behind me changing colors. It is not a pinball machine. It's a piece of digital art. And then my healthy habit in this environment is I'm trying to keep up with this dude online named Funk Roberts, who's this like fitness guy, and he's kicking my ass. And then hopefully for you guys, you're taking advantage of not being at Panucci's and get a little bit healthier along the way. So with that said, so here's my quick story. So I as I said, I grew up in this town outside of New York, outside of New York City, and I was not that inspired as a learner at the time. And so I really underachieved in high school, and then I found myself late to the application process for college, that is. So late, and I grew up in a single family home, so my mom was gone a lot, which means I didn't have as much accountability for doing things like getting prepared for college. And I was so late to the application process, frankly, I didn't even want to go to college, to be perfectly frank with you. And fortunately, I grew up in a home where we could afford it, and so I was required to go to college. But my sister was at Keene State, and she loved it. And I was like, well, I might as well go there. So for lack of any other great reason, that's where I applied, and that's where I got in. And so I enrolled at Keene. And I will tell you that this is where I think my journey becomes really meaningful to me as it starts at Keene, because 3 eureka moments for me truly happened at Keene, and they are real guideposts today at this almost age of 50, and they still help me with my decisions and my values. The first is what I would describe as a love of learning, which was provoked at Keene. The second has been my unwavering commitment to pursue new experiences. And at that age, people call them like taking risks. And they're really just about pursuing new experiences. And then the third is what I would describe as finding your teacher. And I literally found a teacher at Keene, but I just mean someone in your life or some people in your life that can be ongoing sources of feedback, knowledge, recognition, sources of ambition for you. So the first was my love of learning, and this came about in a very disingenuous way. But nonetheless, you find your stimulants, and here was mine. I had to deal with my dad that if I did well academically, he would help me along the way with some cash. It was basically like a pay to play. And I didn't really go into Keene thinking, hey, I'm going to be a straight A student. I went into Keene thinking I'm going to have a great time. I'll get a degree, and I'll manage my way in and out of that college in, let's say, a little over 4 years. That was basically my plan. And then I quickly, found that living on no money is not fun in college. And so I called my dad and said, look, what will it take for you to give me, $50, $100 a week where I can get by okay and not have to be the dude scrounging up for beer or having to say no to pizza or whatever. And so he made a deal with me. You get great grades and I'll send you some money. That was the second semester of my freshman year, and I never looked back. So was the stimulant healthy? No. But did it, introduce me into getting great grades? Yes. And the important part is that along the way, I really started to learn how to study. I started to learn about my capability for doing well. And I just started to love learning. And I would, kind of fast forward to today, if there were three things that served me well, one of them is my readiness and willingness to learn. So I'm thankful for Keene for that, because it's got me in a position that I've never dreamed that I would be in. I don't mean that from a financial component. I mean that from like, wow, I truly love what I do for work. Second thing that was a derivative of my experience at Keene was my junior year, and we had an opportunity to apply to go to school overseas. And Oxford in England, believe it or not, was one of the connections that Keene had. And it was to Oxford Polytechnic. And, there's probably, 20 something colleges in Oxford. The Polytechnic school was a technical school. And I did not think I'd get in, so I didn't bother to apply. Well, I did apply, did get in, and so I went. And there I was sitting with the smartest people in the world with a major imposter's complex, which was also an unhealthy stimulant, but has wound up being a great stimulant for me today. Fast forward to today, whenever I'm in a job that I feel that I am fully qualified for, I think I'm in the wrong job. I think it's super healthy to be in a job where you didn't bluff your way into it, but you're not fully ready for it. And people hired you based on your potential to go actually do that job. I learned that lesson the hard way and then the easy way when I was at Oxford. I truly did not think I belonged. And there were people from all over the planet in those colleges, and we all interacted with everybody. And so I just had to work harder. And what it did for me was, yes, I kind of validated my love of learning and this pursuit of new experiences. But the deal that I made with you over there, kind of like the deal I have with my dad, was if you get a certain GPA after the first 10 weeks, you get a month off. You can go wherever you want. If you don't get a certain GPA, you get like a week and a half off. Well, there was that stimulant to go do very well academically. And so I traveled Europe as a 19-year-old for a little over 4 weeks, which introduced me to my love of travel, of other places, my pursuit of new experiences, which never would have happened to me. This small town in New York going to a small town in New Hampshire, and all of a sudden I'm in the middle of Rome and Greece and Barcelona and Berlin and Amsterdam on a poor man's budget, but that didn't much matter. And that was my second kind of life lesson, and I still do it today. I've moved 4 times since I got to back from college, and it's super healthy. And it has helped me pursue my love of music, my love of cooking, new cultural opportunities, new professional opportunities. And what I used to perceive as risks, which essentially are all the reasons you make up in your head that some shit's not going to work out. It was really just the courage to go try something new. And it has really served me well. And as trite as that sounds, it would not have happened the way that it did had I not applied from Keene State to go to Oxford. And the real bridge there was, I don't belong, and that's the bridge that I crossed. And then the third life lesson that has served me well, which really all happened at Keene, that's why it's so easy to share my journey with you, is this notion of what I describe as finding a teacher. And in that, I found Dr. Pruchansky, who 2 years ago, I helped teach his last class. He was a business professor at Keene. And that dude worked me so hard and grinded us into weekends. Saturday night at 2 a.m., I was doing work for this guy as a senior at Keene, thinking, this is the opposite of how I should be spending my senior year. And he instilled in me work ethic and stretching myself and pushing for results that I didn't think I could get. And I'm still in touch with him. And when I got my first job out of college, I thanked him. And when I got my first CEO job as a software company, I wrote him and thanked him. When I got my second CEO job, I wrote him again. And yet when I joined Vista as a partner, where I probably still don't belong, I thanked him yet again. And so those are really like 3 major milestones that happened all in this tiny period of time, in this tiny, unsuspecting town in New Hampshire, that truly unlocked this notion of, I'm just going to go pursue a bunch of things. I'm going to have a river guide, like a guy like Dr. Pruchansky. And along the way, I've got to expose myself to scenarios where I'm ready and willing to learn. So I'll stop there, see if there are any questions. Otherwise, I can kind of go on and walk you through how these unfolded into whatever happened next.
David, I'm not seeing any in the Q&A, so that's a good reminder for everyone that's on. Please use the Q&A feature to toss some questions over to David, and Mark will help us manage that. I don't know, David, if it's coming up in sharing your story, but where we have a lot of juniors and seniors on in particular attending these events, I'd love to hear a bit about the transition to that first job. We all feel that that is an important first step to greater success along the way, but I imagine that's part of your story. So plug it wherever you want.
So my first real job was my junior year in high school, where I was a garbage man, and I rode on the back of a garbage truck. And I had the humiliating task of picking up the garbage of my friends, which was, I will never forget that. So that accelerated me out of college into a meaningful job search, so I didn't have to do anything remotely close to that. My first job, coincidentally, is where our good friend is with the San Francisco background, where Daniel's daughter is. So the experience that I had traveling overseas, when I came back to Keene, I called my mom and I said, I got 1 year left. When I graduate, the next day I am driving to California, and I'm going to keep this desire and this passion to go pursue new experiences alive. That's what I'm going to do. And sure enough, when I graduated a year later, the very next day, I got into her tiny little rinky-dink car, and I drove 3,000 miles to San Francisco, where I did not know anybody. And at the time, I called my dad, and he said, well, I don't know anybody out there, do you? And I said, I don't. He said, well, that sounds like a terrible idea. So I went, and probably says a lot about my relationship with my dad, but I did go, and I did not have a job. I did not have a lead, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And what I instead did was find people that I liked and admired and said, hey, what do you do for work? How could that go for me? So I did not have any leads. This was '93. The job market was terrible. And at the time, there was really no internet. So if you didn't know anyone, you were going through the newspaper, looking at classes. This is what I, in fact, did in my apartment in San Francisco, with a highlighter, circling classified ads that now you would see that, you know, whatever rags are printing classified ads are probably inappropriate. That's what I did for about a month. And I called Oracle. I met a bunch of people that were working at Oracle. They're like, oh, it's amazing. Everybody loves it. I didn't even know what they did. I cold called Oracle. I finally got an interview. I found people that could help me prepare for it. And so I got hired, and I started at Oracle as a telesales rep, where you wear a headset. For me, it was 5:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon, because we were on the West Coast, and I covered East Coast companies. So I got up at 4:30 every morning, drove down to Silicon Valley from the city, and I put on a headset. And the day I started, I had two emotions that carried with me until the day I left Oracle. One is that I'm so grateful to be here. And two is that I can't wait to get out of here. It was a little bit like going to Vegas, because the job was such a grind. But I quickly latched on to my second teacher, which was the CEO of Oracle, which is Larry Ellison. And I thought, man, I want to be just like that guy. Not as crass and inappropriate, and I didn't have a notion of being a billionaire, but I wanted to lead like he did. I wanted to run a software company, and I was opening up to what was about to become a software-centric world. It just took 10 years, and of course today that's how the planet operates. So that was like my second teacher. And as I said, I had no interest in software. I have since run two software companies, which we'll get to. I still have not written a single line of code. So that is both something that I'm proud of and a little bit embarrassed to reveal, but it is what it is. I stayed at Oracle. I thought it would be 2 years. I was there for 16 years. Every year they gave me more to do. And I had an amazing journey throughout that company, all through the sales organization. But I started as a telesales rep, and I wound up running North America sales from year 15 to 16. And it was a great place to be. I learned probably more there than I could have at any other company during that period of time. And got very lucky to stumble into the world of software, and I can talk about that in a moment. So. Steve, is that kind of answering that question? I don't have a better. I wish I had a more prepared response. Like, hey, this is how you should think about getting ready. We can hit that during some dialogue. But you know, my mission was go live where you want to be. Find people that you think are good for you and with you, and you're good for them. and obviously being a market where you think you could pursue a job. And I think I kind of did it in that order. I knew I wanted to be somewhere not in New York or on the East Coast.
Yeah, thank you, David. That's great. And just to follow up on one thing you said you found some people to help you prepare for that first interview. Who were they just in general?
Yeah.
How do you find that relationship, and how did they help you prepare for that?
So this is probably a good, set of kind of things to be mindful of as this group thinks about pursuing job opportunities. I'm still surprised, and in an unfavorable way, by how many people are underprepared for an interview and or a job pursuit, because the answers to the test are out there. And it's either a lack of desire or of intuition or of just judgment, where people are not finding other folks that can help them get prepared for that job or that next job or that first job. So in talking with the folks that were at Oracle, describe the culture to me. What kind of people do really well there? What do you think they're going to ask me in my interviewing process? How do they measure success there? What's a great first interview like? What should my objective be? What kind of questions should I answer or ask? What should I not ask? What should I be prepared to be asked about me? What are the do's and the, all that stuff is there. And I wouldn't necessarily rely on whatever's online. I would just find people that can help you. Like, I don't know how many people are on this call, but if managed properly, I can help a number of you think about how to prepare for your first interview. So it's the better word is probably to be resourceful. And unlike a college exam, where I don't want to say you can't cheat, but you really can't get the answers, you can get the answers to how to crush an interview by asking people that have been there before you and or people that are actually in that company or were in that sort of an environment. That's all available to folks. And when folks come unprepared to us, and I don't usually interview the junior guys now, but we still get folks that come out of the best schools in the country with their hands on any resource you can get. And these are all the Harvard, MIT, Stanford kids that even might have spent like 3 years at Goldman, and they still come to us really unprepared, which to me is just poor judgment, which is a knockout punch. But I know I strayed there a little bit, but it's go find folks that can help you is the quick answer. And if you don't even know who those folks are, talk to guys like you, Daniel, me, and we can get you there. And the difference is just in the dude that goes and does it.
Thank you. And just so everyone knows, as we've done each week that we've been virtual, we will have David's contact information at the final, as the final slide as we're exiting the room. So he has graciously offered his email address, and we'll have his company website and the website to his first person project interview that Daniel referenced. Daniel, I know you were planning to head to dinner. I wondered if you had a question for David or?
No, thanks for opening up that opportunity to me. For you students who are tuned in tonight, the advice that David gave you just now is really good advice. Also, I just want to note that you've got amazing resources right here at Keene State College with both your professors and academic and career advising. I'm not officially at Keene State for the moment because of an injury that I had, but I'm planning to be back probably in the fall. And so you can also reach out to me as well. Yeah, David, you talked about the importance of software. I'm not sure if you're aware, we've just created a minor in data analytics at Keene State. Maybe you could just talk to a little bit to students about how they might frame their thinking about how to take advantage of their time while they're still in college.
Well, I guess it sort of comes back to what I was just describing, and that to the degree that folks have capacity, it would be to start networking would be number one. now, and your junior year is not too soon. I just spent 45 minutes on the phone yesterday with a guy at Michigan who's a freshman that wants to know everything he can possibly know about software and private equity. So I don't think it's too soon. Two, and I should have said this up front, if you don't know what you want to do, don't sweat that. Don't let that stifle you into a point of indecision. Talk to folks in fields that you might be considering. And you might not even know what kind of function you want to be in. Like, do you want to be in a finance group? Do you want to be in a sales organization? Do you want to be in a talent and health organization? Are you someone that's wired by products? You might not even know that, and that would be kind of for-profit people. But if you can just start to cluster some areas of interest, whether it's an industry like healthcare or manufacturing or hospitality, although it's an awful time for that, so maybe press pause, real estate, finance, software, you can just categorically start to think, those things could be interesting to me. That would be kind of step one. Then step two would be, in this time that you have, to try to develop some connections into those industries and or those specific sorts of functions. And I'm sure between Steve, Daniel, and others, and even just LinkedIn and people that you know, you can start to do that. And then it just kind of gets to step three, which is, hey, what do I need to know? What should someone like me know about getting into the healthcare field? What's it like? What are the expectations like? What are the skills required? What kind of personalities do well in those types of organizations? And the whole purpose is to just get a little more informed, a little more prepared, and a little more connected. And I assure you that as you start to approach May, you're going to turn up the throttle on your hustle. And as you approach June and July, you're going to turn it up even more. One thing that's really relevant for this environment, and I was just talking to my nephew about this, who's about to graduate from college. The job market's not great right now, but it's temporary. You know, this is not yet 2008, 9, and 10, where we had like a systemic financial and economic calamity. This is obviously a health thing. If we can get through it quickly, we're gonna bounce back quickly. So don't. I would not get too desperate about summertime employment, and maybe instead take advantage of what will be a very special set of kind of free weeks and months for you. But that, you know, kind of rewind, I would start to just try to hone in a little bit more about what kind of job you would like, by industry, by specific job type. Try to understand who that network of people could be that could help you kind of learn more about that, and then kind of help you get more prepared to go pursue it. Those would be like the three blocks, and really resist having anxiety if you're not yet sure. It will come to you, would be number one, and it might not be your first job. And that's okay. Your first job might be to pay the bills and just kind of get on with getting on. We got a lot of people in our group in private equity that started off as lawyers. We have a guy that was writing scripts in Hollywood. That didn't work out too well. So your first job does not have to be your flagship career pursuit. So hopefully that's resonating.
Yeah, thank you, David. Do you want to carry on from there?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll fast forward here. So I wound up leaving Oracle to go be the CEO at a software company that was based in Chicago. So we moved from San Francisco to Chicago. And then coincidentally, we sold that to Oracle, but out of all the companies. So I was actually back at Oracle. I was at that company for 2.5 years. We fixed it up and sold it to Oracle. Did not want to stay at Oracle, so I left. I went to pursue another software CEO job. 2.5 years later, we sold that. So, and we moved to Dallas to do that. So this is all about this pursuit of new experiences. And then I wound up getting a call from Vista Equity Partners. And Vista is the world's most successful private equity firm in terms of returns, investment returns. All Vista does is focus on software. So the firm is 20 years old. We've got about $60 billion under management. And we package it up into private equity funds, which means we raise money from big institutions and state pension funds. So we'll go, the state of New York will give us $500 million. State of New Hampshire might give us something less. State of California might give us $1 billion. And we take all that money and we buy software companies outright. We don't buy their stocks. We're not a public equity firm or like a hedge fund where we buy stocks. We buy the entire company. And we do that with the money that those institutions gave us. And we also borrow a lot of money. So we'll borrow money. If we pay $1 billion for a software company, we'll probably write a check for $300 million, and then we'll borrow $700 million from Goldman Sachs or Bank of America. So that's called debt. So we'll put our own equity in, we'll put debt in, we'll buy that company, and then we apply our operational improvement methods. And we have 20 years of how to make a software company create much more value. And so we help them with their recruiting. We help them build their products better and faster and cheaper. We help their sales organization get more productive. We help their marketing generate more leads. We help their company actually get healthier as an organization. We help them with their customer success efforts. So in about 3 years, we typically sell those companies for 3 times what we paid for them. So it's the equivalent of, hey, I bought a house on the block for, $100,000. I did all my home improvements to it. And 3 years later, I sold it for $350,000. That's what we do. We just do it with software companies. And so our average returns over those 20 years are almost 4x. So whatever we paid, we generally, if an investor gave us $1 billion, we're giving that investor $4 billion back. It's about a 4x return. We do that under 4 years, generally. And the most impressive thing, and I know this sounds immodest, but it's statistically amazing, is that we've done almost 500 deals in our 20 years, and we've never lost money on a realized transaction, ever. So that would be the equivalent of, people on this call investing in 500 different stocks in the market, Apple, Google, Amazon, Netflix, and picking 500 stocks over 20 years and never losing money on a single stock. So that's what we do. We're pretty good at what we do. We love what we do, and it's a great time to be in software. So when this is a name worth looking up, but Robert Smith is my boss. He started Vista. You may have seen him. He's the guy that paid off everybody's tuition at Morehead State last May. That's Robert. And so I've got the pleasure of working for what is now my 3rd teacher in my life. And he is equal part amazing economist and private equity and software guru, as he is humanitarian, philanthropist, and just a super decent dude that's just like you and I. And so I've got the pleasure of working for him. He keeps us on our toes. He knows everything there is to know about investing in software. But what he saw 20 years ago was, hey, software is going to eat the world. Every single industry, to some extent, will be a software industry. And to be sure, until the other day, the hotel with the most room nights of all of them doesn't own a single hotel or bar of soap or piece of dirt. That's Airbnb. And until recently, the largest retailer, didn't own a store. That was Amazon. The largest transportation company doesn't own a car. That's Uber. You can go on and on and on. These are all software companies taking down these massively asset-intensive industries that were traditionally dominated by companies that actually owned real estate and hotels, and companies that owned, vehicles, and companies that owned, if you were JCPenney or Walmart, all the stores. Software is just turning all of this upside down. And to be really sure, my kids are software experts. They're on these smartphones every day. They know apps in and out. They're all learning how to work those things at an expert level. So his prediction 20 years ago is that software is going to eat the world. Every industry will be investing in software. And he wanted to be on the vanguard of investing in those companies that were kind of helping drive that transformation. So you fast forward to today, and of course he was correct. And I think I'll pause here. I think the presently the most underscoring kind of mention of that is that McDonald's, the hamburger maker, or the world's largest real estate holder, but they just bought a software company. And they did it because when you drive through there in your car, you see the same menu that I see. Well, not too long from now, they're going to read the tag on the front of your car, and they're going to know exactly who you are. And Steve's menu is going to show up, and they're going to know exactly what you want and what you might want. So they're going to gradually upsell you. You're going to love that experience. You're going to feel very catered to and loved by McDonald's, which is going to make you trust them a little bit more, which might make that recommendation they have for you to try this, you might be more inclined to do that. But the real reason they're doing that is that the cars will go through faster. And they think they'll go through by about 6 to 8 seconds faster per car, which globally will generate about $1 billion in economic value for McDonald's. 5 years ago, we would not have expected McDonald's to buy a software company. Today, McDonald's is now a software company. So that's like the latest case in point. Hopefully that's making sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Could you help Taco Bell do that, please?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, look, for the folks on the call, I hope you consider software for a couple of reasons. It is the most productive sector on the planet right now. And I cannot envision a scenario where that is not the case. So we have all these productivity, by sector. Software is by far the most productive sector. It is the most profitable sector. So if I haven't appealed to you yet, let me put it this way. It will have the most number of jobs that are the highest paying. So maybe I have your attention right now. The most number of jobs will be in software, and then it's the highest paying sector. And you do not need to be a software person. You might be someone that wants to be in the HR department, and you just want to be part of recruiting or payroll and admin and benefits. Maybe that's your thing. Maybe you're just a good salesperson. Maybe you want to be in the marketing group. Maybe you are a product guy. Maybe you are an engineer or an engineer to be. Maybe you just want to be on the recruiting team. There are a number of different jobs in a software company that have nothing to do with your knowledge of coding. And I would say that about 75% of the jobs in a software company are non-engineering. So I would really encourage you guys to consider that. And then the third thing that it's tough to make it tangible, but it's just a really cool place to work. Software companies the cultures are super cool. It's highly innovative. The foosball machines are real. The ping pong tables are there. The music is getting played. And some of them, if they're doing well, the beer is flowing on taps on Fridays. Like, it's still a super cool place to be. And it's in every single city in the country. And if it's not in Keene, it's not far away. My guess is there's something in Portsmouth. There's certainly a bunch on, 128 or 129 in Boston, not far from you. That's like, Software Alley in the Northeast. It's all over New York, DC, Miami, Detroit, Chicago, Austin. It's everywhere. So I would really encourage you to consider it, to learn a lot, advance your career, earn a lot, and have a lot of fun while doing it.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and Manchester has emerged as a software hub as well, mainly through a young man named Jeremy Hitchcock, but he's already spun off a bunch of different companies and always reinventing himself over there in the mill yard. Again, like you said, very cool place, very cool culture. So thank you for that, David. A reminder to use the Q&A mark. Do we have anything in there waiting for David?
Yeah, we got a couple of things. David, perhaps you can follow up on your last answer talking about a student who's an education major and is wondering how they can maybe find software applications or things in the software sector that relate to education and being an education major.
So here's that's a very convenient setup, but I would challenge you to throw a major at me that wouldn't work in software. We actually have a number of our trainers, and it depends on where you are in your education pursuit, but we have a number of trainers in our software. So I should have mentioned this to you. We own and operate 65 software companies today. Vista does. So we're the majority owner of 65 companies. Collectively, they have 70,000 employees, $18 billion in revenue, and we're in every single country. And if you add up all the companies that we own, it makes us the 4th largest enterprise software company on the planet. It would go Microsoft, Oracle, SAP, Vista, Salesforce, Adobe, companies like that. So I'm sharing that with you because we got 70,000 jobs, not opening, but jobs. And we probably have at any given point in time, 1,000 job openings would be my guess, at least that, if not probably 10,000. Present 90-day period excluded. We have a number, here's a natural segue though, but we have a number of our trainers in our software companies. Those are people that train our sales reps to be better, or they train our engineers to be better, or they train our customers to use our software better, that are really experienced in curriculum and teaching and design points and key impact areas and learning plans. We have a number of education majors that came into our companies to become the company trainers and to help them design an entire learning and development program. And that cascades into like management learning programs. That cascades into awareness, like ESG or sexual harassment, or a whole bunch of compliance, the training curriculums that we have to implement. So we have a number of people that came from education backgrounds that work at those 65 companies as learning and development experts. And what we value is their background in education, number one, their love of teaching and delivery, and then we just train them on what to deliver. That's the easy part. So hopefully that answers the question. I want to give you an example of the spectrum of backgrounds that we have in our companies across jobs, not just at Vista, but we have the obvious and more optically obvious diversity around gender, race, ethnicity, social preference, socioeconomic diversity. We have that diversity, and much better than the technology industry averages would. So what we call D&I, or diversity and inclusiveness, Vista has the highest marks, not just for any private equity firm, but for any technology company by far. And to be sure, even if you go to our firm and you look and you see who the managing directors are, you will see different skin types, different genders, and you would be able to conclude, different ethnicities as well from all that. So one of the best employees that I ever hired at my first Vista company, by the way, I was the CEO of 2 Vista companies. So that's how I got introduced to Vista Equity. Best, most productive engineer we ever had, never went to college, and was a bartender. And his girlfriend worked for us, and she was a telesales rep. She came into my office one day. She said, "Hey, my boyfriend is an engineer on the side, but he never went to college, and he's a bartender, and he's a little rough around the edges, but he's been coding on the side for 3 or 4 years, and he's really good." We're like, bring him in. As long as he's a cultural fit and he can pass our assessment, we'll hire anybody. Dude became our most productive engineer in 2 years, and to this day still works in a Vista company. Has probably made a pile of dough along the way. So whether you're an education major or you're someone that's kind of pouring beer and making sure darts don't fly into someone's skull, as long as you're a cultural fit and you can do the job, the world of software will embrace you.
So, Mark, I know there's another question, but I'd love to follow up on something, David, you just said. We've heard the word culture mentioned a lot throughout the series, which has been wonderful. I know Dr. Chitra Kaur, our communications faculty, talks a lot about culture in her classes, and as do other professors. I have not heard assessment related to that. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, so there are 2 key pieces for us. So culture is a very big deal to us, and each company has different culture, but you do need to be a cultural fit, and we can get to that later if you want to. But the real deal for us on culture is that you can't be a brilliant jerk. You can't be for the sports fans out there, an Antonio Brown or a Dennis Rodman or Terrell Owens or Randy Moss. Maybe that resonates more up in New England. If you are a supreme talent, but you're bad for culture or you're bad for the locker room, you might be great for the season, but you're probably not going to carry it all the way through to sustain high performance. We do not tolerate that whatsoever. Second, what we value is that we are loyal to a degree. So we are loyal to our stars, and if they hit a bad patch, no problem. If that bad patch turns into sustained bad performance, you got to move them out, no matter how much we love them. And then 3 is this notion of kind of shifting from family to team. When we buy a lot of these companies, they operate kind of family style, a lot of trust, a lot of compassion, a lot of loyalty. We love all of that. but they tolerate all bad behavior and no one gets kicked out, kind of like a real family. We don't do that. We make these guys become a team where we keep score and people will get kicked out and we don't tolerate bad behavior. So those are kind of the cultural maxims that we appreciate. But on the assessment, we do, in order to work for any Vista company, including Vista, no matter what your role is, receptionist or CEO, you need to take and pass an assessment. It has a huge advantage for people coming right out of college because there's a cognitive piece and there's a personality piece. The personality, there's no pass fail. It's just kind of who you are. And it helps us understand, if you're a little more introverted, you probably don't belong in a sales position. If you're a little more extroverted, you're probably not going to do well sitting at your desk all day long, writing thousands of lines of code. So it helps us kind of figure out where you might be best fit. The cognitive piece is a pass fail, and it's proven to be the greatest predictor of job fit for us, more than anything else combined. And the combination would be, how well did they interview? What's their experience like? What were their references like? What's their background? All that stuff that goes into like job fit. The assessment has proved to be more valuable for us than all that other stuff combined. And it basically assesses, it's some math stuff, it's some verbal stuff, it's some reasoning, it's some objects. The further removed from college you are, the harder it gets. So, and we have a strong bias in all of our companies to hire people with little to no experience. So we are not Oracle or Salesforce or the next cool, Facebook or wherever you guys love to work, where they're looking for a lot of experience. We took the bartender. We take people out of community colleges. We take people that never went to college. We don't care what your college was. If you're a cultural fit and you pass our assessment, the third equalizer is we will give you extraordinary training. Every single Vista company has to install 6 to 10 week training programs for the what we call like the kind of the position roles. Like you're an engineer, you're a salesperson, you're in a technical role. You go through these boot camps and you get training that those other companies would never dream of giving you. So culture fit times you pass the assessment times our boot camps and ongoing training equals you're going to crush it. And we don't care whether you went to MIT or Keene State or you never went to college. It just doesn't matter to us.
Thank you, David. Well, I think as we've experienced week after week during the series and in previous years as well, it speaks well to the Keene State College experience, right? The liberal arts, a lot of group projects, great coaching from faculty members and academic and career advising, career specialists in preparing for interviews. Our Resumania that a fellow alum, David Westover from 72, created years ago, where alums come back and with ACA staff review resumes and things like that. So you just provided for me a great affirmation for the value of a Keene State College experience. So thank you. Mark, I see there are a couple more questions waiting for us.
Yeah, I guess, David, this question relates to something Daniel asked you about, basically how they can get started now. Can you tell us if you had any experience as an intern or how you treat internships now in your current role?
Yeah, I did not personally have an internship, but all of our companies have internships. And they run in perpetuity. So we have some that are in the winter. We obviously have many that are in the summer. This is just going to be a bummer response for you, but in this present environment, I think we're kind of freezing those for the most obvious reason is that we're all working from home right now, and we expect that to persist for at least another month, if not longer, depending on your region. Manhattan could be longer, Southern Cal could be longer. But we have internships at every company. It depends on the size, but they range from, maybe half a dozen up to a few dozen. They're in a variety of roles. You don't have to be experienced whatsoever, which is why it's an internship. And what you might want to do, if I'm appealing to your interest in software, you could certainly go to Vista's website, start to scan some of the software companies that are on there. If we have 60 something up there, you probably haven't heard of 60 something of them. We're not investing in consumer apps, so it's not the next cool thing. These are enterprise application companies you probably haven't heard much about. But kind of coming back to, I would think about where you might want to live, what industries are interesting to you, and then try to intersect those two things. So let's say, for example, hey, I want to stay in New England. I want to be up in the Boston area, broadly, let's call it that. And I am interested in software. You could quickly understand through LinkedIn and through Vista's website what kind of software companies are in Boston. And from there, you could probably, if you're savvy enough on LinkedIn, determine who you might know at some of these companies. You can certainly determine whether they're hiring or not. And they would advertise whether they have internships. So if this sounds overwhelming to you, it's really not hard. It's just going to take some time. This is a multi-hour, multi-phased research project for you. I would consider it that. Don't think you're going to get through this on Saturday afternoon. And by next Tuesday, if you haven't gotten too far, don't start spazzing. This is going to take you like a month to get through. And I would treat it like a project like that. So think about, where do I want to live? What kind of industries do I want to be in? LinkedIn is a great way to intersect those two things. Find out who might be hiring, and they'll probably advertise internships. And then, here's one of those answers you can get by knowing a dude that can help you, me. Go to my website, which you never would have known about prior to this call. Take advantage of not mine, but Vista's website. And as I said, we got several dozen software companies up there. You can determine where they are. I don't think that's easy, so you're probably gonna have to click on every one of them. But we got a handful up in the New England area. And if you include the East Coast, we must have, 20 or something. And from New York up, probably 10.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. We had a reminder come in from Professor Kaur that we use Focus 2 here at Keene State College for career assessment, strengths, weaknesses, interests, and all. So like a lot of amazing resources, that is available through the academic and career advising section of the keene.edu website. So as we've talked about each week, be sure to go there and find all kinds of valuable tools, including some self-reflection activities that David has just talked about. Mark, any other questions waiting for us?
Just a follow-up to what David was just talking about, and he referred to it earlier, but he talked about reaching out and how accessible he is. And in fact, he mentioned that he was on the phone with a freshman from Michigan for 45 minutes a couple of days ago. How does that happen, and how can you use that as a tool or as an example for Keene State College students?
Let me make sure I got that. How does what happen specifically?
How does a freshman from Michigan get 45 minutes of your time?
Oh, got it. Well, that's through good old-fashioned networking. So that is the son of a guy that I know, and the guy sent me a text and said, "Hey, would you be open to taking a call?" And provided that I had the time, I'm like, "Absolutely, I will do that." And not everybody's maybe going to green light that stuff, but if I've got the time, I will certainly do that. And that goes for the folks that are on this call. I don't think I can set up 54 calls over the next 100 days, but I can certainly collaborate over email and take a few calls. The folks that are a little bit maybe clearer or further down the path, so maybe the graduating seniors that are like, "Hey, I'm really interested in software," I would take those calls. We just got to set them up, and it just might take some time. And just on that note, back to the education, the question that came from the person that's majoring in education. Another way to think about it, again, I really encourage you to be in software, to consider pursuing software. Of the 65 companies we own, we are in 70 different industries. So in other words, we own an education software company. It's called PowerSchool. Go look it up. They are in 50% of the classrooms in the United States, K through college. We own healthcare software companies. So if you are a healthcare major and you want to really leverage your experience and your interest in and your exposure to healthcare, we own a bunch of software companies that specialize in healthcare. We own real estate. So we have software companies that are in the real estate space. We own software companies in the financial services space. We own software companies in the manufacturing space, in IT security. Like when you go to our website, you will see that these companies are all in a variety of industries, with the exception of like geology and history, we probably own a software company that just about everybody is in a field where they are majoring or minoring. If you are an English major, which would not really be an industry, you could join one of our marketing teams and help write content on our website, because you're probably a pretty darn good writer at the very least. And that could carry you into web design. There's so many different ways. If I do anything on this call, it would be in a favorable way to provoke you to widen your aperture on what you might be able to go do. So if you're not feeling particularly clear, which could translate into an emotive reaction of not being particularly hopeful, let me blow that up and make sure that you could be very hopeful, because there are so many ways into the world of software, whether it's your major or a region that you want to live in, or just an interest that you've got. We do not discriminate. It's a little ironic. It's the most lucrative industry to get into by far. And I can play that out even further if you have questions on how software company employees earn versus the rest of the country. It's also the easiest one to get into. And those two things should be, and I'll put it this way. The unemployment rate in software is essentially zero. There are more jobs than employees in software, which is insane. And you for those of you that kind of study GDP and the economy a little bit, we don't have enough software people in this country. The engineers are in Asia. The engineers are in Eastern Europe. The engineers are now in South America. We don't have enough of them here just for that kind of job alone. So we're always in a net hiring position in the software industry. Hopefully that resonated a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the word hope being used a few times, David. I think if we can impart that, that's an asset that's really important at this time for our students. So thank you for saying that. I wanted to, I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment. Keep feeding them to Mark, please, in the Q&A box. I had a regret after last week's session, David. I had a friend and fraternity brother of mine from the class of '99 on to talk about his experience getting through the dot-com bubble burst and then the Great Recession, both within a couple years and then a decade after graduating. And his was a very hopeful story. But at one point, he talked about self-development. Early on, you talked about your love of learning. What does that mean for you? Or what are some things you do on a regular basis that helps you to continue to learn and develop in your profession and in your personal life?
Yeah, so this kind of comes back to this imposter's complex that I initially resisted, and now I almost seek it out. And that is to try to put myself in a position where I think I'm not as qualified as the rest of the folks that are in that position. So Vista is a great example. Here I sit with Robert Smith. All the partners went to Stanford and Harvard and Yale and Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, and that obviously was not my background. My requirement to keep learning, which is really a requirement for me to stay on this team, turned into kind of my love of learning. And the easiest way for me to do that is to consistently try to surround myself with people where I have this kind of notion of give-get. And I don't mean in a transactional or bartering way, but in a valuable way. What is it that I can give to this person that they would consider to be valuable? Whether it's feedback, recognition, insight, encouragement, unconditional, non-judgmental relationship, whatever it might be, and kind of what can I get back? And I mean that in a professional way. I don't mean that so much in my social life. And so I'm usually in this environment where I'm forced to learn, and it's turned into just a real desire to. So, do I need to get more informed about a subject before I take a call? Let me go learn that. And it's like it's never been easier. I can just either talk to Siri or let my fingers do the walking, and all of a sudden I'm learning. I will tell you that the kids that we hire that show the best and do the best, I would say demonstrate, they have 4 traits and behaviors that are really obvious to us. One is their readiness and willingness to learn. And that is, how much do they proactively try to go figure out? How well do they take coaching and feedback? Can we just tell it like it is and be like, hey, Steve, look, man, you just suck at this. I don't know how else to put it, and we just need to fix it. And you're like, got it. Tell me how to fix it. That's like the willingness to learn. The readiness is, what do you go do about it? And then, the third dimension is like, how trainable are you? So can we improve your skills and your competencies every time we want to make you better? And that would be on the readiness part. That would be kind of trait / behavior number 1. The second is what I just put into a mashup, and it's the kids that are hungry, gritty, and scrappy. These are the Tom Bradys of the world that are not the fastest. They don't have the best arm. They are not the smartest. They just outwork everybody. And we value that now at Vista more than we ever have, because we've got 20 years of employee experience now where we can look back and be like, with the exception of maybe 1% where they're just so naturally gifted, 99% of our stars are the hungry, scrappy, gritty people that just grind it out. It's the Patriots, and I hate the Patriots. I'm a New Yorker, but it's this system of kind of overlooked, underpicked people. The Edelmans, the Julian, like those dudes that they just work harder. And when I joined Oracle, I so didn't belong there. I needed to put in an extra hour in the morning and an extra hour at night. The morning was to get ready. The night was to catch up. And I had to do that. That was just to be like, muscularly adequate for the job. And that turned into 10 extra hours a week. And that took me like a year where I had to do it. And then I kind of look back at a year and I caught up to everybody, but I was so conditioned to keep doing that in my second year, I passed everybody. And I did because it wasn't an intellectual advantage. It was simply a math advantage. I was putting in 10 extra hours a week. Times 48 weeks or 50 weeks, I was getting in 500 extra hours a year doing the same job that these dudes were doing. And that's how I got ahead. So that's kind of the scrappy, gritty part that is coupled with my need to and my love for learning.
Thank you for sharing those details. Very valuable. I'm aware of the time. We have just a couple minutes. If you have a final question for David, please toss it into the Q&A and Mark can queue that up. As I have done each week, as I say, it's been a real joy to pitch in and help Daniel out this semester. So like Tatiana, who is on tonight with us, I've obviously done all of the events this semester. And David, a few things you mentioned, including the seeking of feedback and coaching, the commitment to lifelong learning, if you want to call it that, and just the encouragement of thinking more broadly about how one's skills and passions could be applied. Early on, you said, at a software company, engineers make up just a small percentage of the entire workforce. We actually started this semester's series with a panel on banking, and that was the key point. We had 5 panelists in very different aspects of what it takes to run a bank. And the point being, the teller, which we all sort of think of in terms of banking, is just one fraction of the workforce that's helping me with my transaction and helping that transaction earn interest and all the other things that go on, reinvesting it in my community and other things that I appreciate. So you've helped support that theme that really has been consistent from week to week, regardless of the particular focus. So thank you. Mark, do we have another Q&A popping up? Or Q?
No more questions, Steve. Just pass along to David that our faculty and staff members who are watching tonight are very appreciative of what he's presented tonight, and has brought up some great points, and has reinforced a lot of things that they've been talking to their students about.
Indeed. So, Misty, if you don't mind throwing up the last screen, please, with David's contact info. So students, take a screenshot if you'd like. David, thank you for being so generous with your offer to reach out through email and continue the conversation. And we'll be sensitive to your time and make sure we're respectful on our end. And so everyone knows, if you're an underclassman, if that's still a term from way back in my day, David does look forward to getting to campus again in the next few years after we get through this, and when it fits into his work schedule and travel schedule. So we'll benefit from his insights and experiences again in certain classrooms here on campus in the future. David, I want to personally thank you so much for all that you've shared. I know I look forward to watching the video and unpacking more of what you have shared with us. And I know that it'll be promoted heavily within certain classes here at Keene State. The video recording will be. So the learning that you've helped us with tonight will continue to ripple out for weeks, months, and years to come, no doubt. So thank you very much for sharing your time and your insights and experiences with us.
You're so welcome. And as I said at the top of our visit, I wish I had done this when I was in the shoes of the folks that are on the call. And so more specifically, thank you for not only just pulling this all together in the whole series, but doing what I imagine you're doing, which is distilling this down into some salient points and stringing it all together throughout the series and making that consumable for the folks. So on behalf of them, I appreciate it a lot. It's great work, so thank you.
Thank you, David. And that's a great segue into the reminder that we're going to do one better than that, David. I'm not going to distill it all. Next week, we will have 4 students who have been at all or nearly all of the Career Speaker Series events this semester, one of whom, anyway, I know has been active with the program for several years now. She's a senior. So even better than me distilling some themes and main takeaways from the spring semester of Career Speaker Series, we'll have 4 students next week, same time. New login as always. Look for that tomorrow on the website, Career Speaker Series website. But yeah, next week students will be able to learn from their peers. So that'll be a wonderful event.
That's cool. If you can send me that link, I'd love to join if it's permissible.
Oh, absolutely, David. We sure will. Thank you. Thank you for that. So one final reminder, again, a lot of the resources that we've talked about, including for career reflection, and are available at the Academic and Career Advising section of the keene.edu website. And the career counselors are eager to have meetings with you. Obviously, they're doing that virtually, but they're all working still full-time, plus some, I'm sure, knowing the 3 of them. So they are for internships in career search. Kristen, Louise, and Bev are still there for you. You can sign up for an appointment at the Academic and Career Advising section of the website, and you'll get time with them to do some career exploration and planning for your future. So they're there for you. Please use them. And with that, I will say again, I hope this finds you well. Continue. I hope you're getting out for some physical activity each day. Hopefully the weather in New England will turn a bit and come back to the way it was over the weekend. But we wish you well, and please keep safe. And we'll look forward to seeing you next Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Thanks for being with us.